Hi, I'm Gordon from Camera Labs, and this is my review of the Panasonic Lumix S 24-60mm f2.8, a bright aperture, general purpose zoom lens designed for L-mount cameras with full frame sensors. Announced alongside the S12 body in May 2025, it costs around $900 or pounds. Depending on your region, that makes it roughly the same price as Sigma's 28-70mm f2.8 zoom. Both lenses offer a smaller, lighter and cheaper alternative to a traditional 24-70 2.8 zoom, shaving a little from either their wide or long ends to become more compact and affordable, while maintaining that constant and desirable f2.8 aperture. The Lumix S 24-60 measures 84mm in diameter, 100mm in length, and weighs 544 grams. This makes it similar in length to the Sigma 28-70 2.8 and only 74 grams heavier, but it is chunkier at 12mm wider. Both lenses are however smaller and lighter than the 24-70 2.8 though. Sigma's own 24-70 2.8 DG DNR, seen here, measures 83 by 123mm and weighs considerably more at 835 grams. Just for the record, its current price is about $1,200 or pounds, so roughly around 1/3 more than the 24-60 or 28-70 models. And I've got separate reviews of both of these Sigma lenses if you're interested. In terms of controls, there's a switch for auto or manual focus and a customizable function button alongside it, a nice addition to a non-pro Lumix S lens. Note there's no optical stabilization on this model. Next up comes the zoom ring, extending the barrel by about 27mm as you increase the focal length. Towards the end of the barrel is a free spinning motor-assisted manual focusing ring which turns smoothly and on recent Lumix bodies can be changed in direction or reassigned to a custom function. At the end of the barrel is a 77mm filter thread, and Panasonic supplies a petal-shaped lens hood that twists on and is released with a locking button. The build quality is very good, with dust and splash resistance including a rubber grommet at the mount, and it's also rated to temperatures down to -10 Celsius. Okay, now for the range, which takes you from a reasonably wide-angle 24mm to a slightly longer than standard 60mm. Now ranges are of course entirely personal, but I prefer this over the Sigma 28-70 as I value that wide end over being able to reach 70mm, and as you'll see in just a moment, you can still capture decent portraits or presentations at 60mm, plus Panasonic bodies have got a secret trick I'm going to show you in just a moment. So here's the range when filming video, starting at 24mm before zooming into 60mm, but it's important to note that this can be extended using the hybrid zoom feature on recent Lumix S bodies. So for comparison, here's the same physical turn of the zoom ring, but with hybrid zoom enabled on the S12 body. Now I'm filming in 4K here, which has let me effectively extend the reach to 93mm without losing any quality. It's a really nice feature for video use, and it could make up for not reaching 70mm optically. And at the wide end, here's how it looks for vlogging using IBIS and the cropless stabilization mode on the new S12 body. Now normally for vlogging I'd prefer wider lenses like the Lumix 20-60 as their wider coverage can then accommodate the crop from extra digital stabilization. But the cunning cropless stabilization mode could deliver a similar result with a lens that only starts at 24mm. Next for focusing on the S12 body, here with the lens at 24mm f2.8 and using a single AF area in the middle where you can see it's fast and confident. And next at 60mm 2.8, where you'll also notice the minimal focus breathing as the lens pulls focus. Note that I'm filming the back of the camera as using an HDMI recorder can slow the focusing on Lumix cameras, so do beware of any reviews that take that approach. Now for the same test except for video, again starting at 24mm 2.8. Once again, smooth and confident focus pulls here and minimal breathing. And now at 60mm 2.8, again pulling focus confidently for video, and again with minimal focus breathing visible. And finally for the focusing section, a test with a moving subject, using human face and eye detection across the whole frame. First at 24mm 2.8, where you could use the lens for environmental presentations. This also gives you an idea of the kind of background blur that's possible for portraits at this end of the range. And next at 60mm 2.8, a more flattering focal length for portraits or presentations with greater separation from the background and less distractions. I actually like the coverage here, and while there's obviously less background blur than using a typical 50mm prime lens, I do think that the rendering looks quite nice here. Now I'm going to be doing a portrait test for photos in just a moment, but first let's check out the quality with a more distant real-life scene. Now photographing these is harder than taking a picture of a chart at close range, but since performance can vary at different focusing distances, I do think it's important to use real-life distant subjects where possible. So let's start by taking a closer look at my sample here at 24mm 2.8, angled as always so that details run into the corners. As you'd hope, it's already looking nice and sharp in the middle, with only a very mild boost in contrast if you stop down to f4. So back to the 2.8 sample before heading into the far corner. Here there's a little softening to the finest details and some darkening due to vignetting. Neither could be described as particularly bad, but you can improve both of them by stopping down, with the image looking much better by f8. So for big views, I'd say it's worth stopping down at 24mm for the sharpest results across the frame. Next, for roughly midway through the range at 40mm, starting with the aperture wide open at 2.8. Taking a close look in the middle again shows a decent degree of detail, although like the 24mm test you can enjoy a small boost in contrast if you stop down to f4. Returning to the f2.8 sample and heading into the corner reveals a little softening, but I'd say to less of a degree than at 24mm. Gradually closing the aperture will improve the details in the extreme corners, sharpening up nicely by f8. And finally, at the long end of the range at 60mm 2.8, where it tells the same story as before. It's looking nice and crisp in the middle of the frame when you take a closer look, but there is a mild boost in contrast if you stop down to f4. Now back to the f2.8 sample before heading into the far corner, where again you'll notice very mild softening of the image at the maximum aperture. Again, it's not bad, but you can sharpen it up in the extremes by closing the aperture, with the detail peaking I'd say around f8. Next for a portrait test with the lens at 60mm 2.8, where as you saw earlier it's possible to enjoy more of the surroundings than a typical longer portrait focal length lens, but still with a decent degree of separation. Taking a closer look shows decent details on the focused areas and nice rendering in the background that mostly avoids distracting or busy bokeh. For a more formal test of bokeh and rendering, it's time for my fairy light test, first at 60mm 2.8 and taken from the closest focusing distance of 19cm. Here you can see nice large bokeh blobs that manage to minimise outlining or textures within. They become a little elongated towards the corners, but nowhere near as much as brighter aperture lenses. Close the aperture to f4 and those blobs become more uniformly round with minimal evidence of the diaphragm system. From f5.6 onwards though, you'll notice more of a 9-sided geometric shape to the blobs. So if you prefer rounded blobs, I'd say stick to those larger apertures. And for the record, here's the same test at 24mm 2.8, where the blobs are smaller as you'd expect, but there's still some separation in this close-up composition. Again at f4 you can make more of them more uniformly rounded, while from f5.6 onwards the 9-bladed shape of the diaphragm system becomes more visible. And at the other end of the scale, here's how diffraction spikes look when pointing directly at the sun with the lens set to 24mm f22. Here the 18 diffraction spikes are pretty well defined and avoid some of the artifacts that many zooms suffer from. And now for my final verdict, during which I'll show you more photos taken with the 24-60 on a Lumix S1 II, and I've got a bunch more in my separate review of the S1 II body if you're interested in seeing them. The Panasonic Lumix S 24-60mm f2.8 is a valuable addition to the system, delivering a very usable general purpose range with a bright constant aperture without the cost, size or weight of a traditional 24-70. We've seen Sigma take a similar approach with their 28-70 and now Panasonic is here to cater for anyone who'd prefer to sacrifice 70mm at the long end to enjoy 24 at the wide end. The optical quality is good, with sharp details across the focal range and for subjects near and far. The extreme corners can be a tad softer at 2.8, but they do sharpen up nicely as you close down the aperture, and I was impressed by the rendering style for a zoom at this price point, which minimised distracting outlines or onion ring textures. Ultimately, the focal range of a lens is down to personal preferences, but I do love that L-mount now has a pair of general purpose 2.8 zooms that are more compact and affordable than a traditional 24-70. Sigma's 28-70 is there for those who value the longer end, while Panasonic's newer 24-60 caters for those who don't want to give up 24mm coverage. Or if you do need a traditional 24-70 2.8, Sigma also has a great model that represents really good value, and I've got reviews of all of these lenses if you're interested. It's also worth noting that the hybrid zoom and cropless stabilization on recent Lumix bodies may reduce or even eliminate the need for longer or wider lenses respectively, at least for video work. Bottom line, the Lumix S 24-60 has become my go-to lens for general purpose shooting on L-mount bodies and comes recommended. And that's it for another lens review. If you found any of it useful, please do consider giving the video a like and my channel a follow. And if you're thinking of buying this lens or indeed any other gear, I've got links to the latest prices in the description. I also have a separate review of the Lumix S1 II body launched alongside the 24-60 lens with loads more sample images from both products. So thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.